Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Functions in Excel. My name is Maritas Macapagal, and I'll be your host for this afternoon. This will be an hour session. And this session is going to be recorded so that I could actually share with you the recordings hopefully by next week so you could actually review it. Okay, and you could, once again, you could use the chat or the Q&A to send me any question as we go through the course of this session. So I'm going to turn off my video so everybody could just focus on the slide and that I'm going to share with all of you. Okay, so give me a minute. I'll see you later, but I could still, okay, there. Now, for today's objective, okay, our learning objective for today, participants will be able to learn how to use the AutoSum function. So you're going to learn how to enter and how to use the sum function, various ways of using the sum function. Use average, minimum, maximum count, the count8 function to perform calculation in worksheet. And finally, we will also cover how to use the date functions. Okay. Now, I cannot start this class without reviewing basically a formula in Excel. So what is really a formula in Excel? A formula is an equation that performs numeric calculations such as addition, subtraction, which you could see right on the screen, division, average, and multiplication. It uses operators to perform calculations, right? And as you could see on the screenshot that I have, which I'm going to share to all of you too, this table contains a common basic operators that indicate the type of operation the formula will perform. And you can see it from the top, you have the plus key, and that's actually being used for addition. You use the minus key to subtract. You use the X, to multiply. However, in Excel, we don't use the X, but we use the asterisk or sometimes referred to as the star. And then to divide, we basically use not the division symbol, but rather the forward slash we use in dividing in Excel. And of course, we still use the percentage. Okay. Now, when you are today we're going to talk about the structure of a function. So when we're going to do a function, right, we'll have the arguments, we'll put the input of the functions, and we'll also be able to see some functions with numbers. You could actually use the actual number. But in Excel, we basically don't use the actual number, but we actually use the cell address. So formula in Excel starts always with an equal sign, right? Just like the example that you see right here. To enter a formula, you select the cell where you want the result to appear. So this is just a quick review. You type the formula and press the enter key. When the formula is entered into a cell, it also appears in the formula bar. Cell address is being used in the formula, not the actual value. And to be able to calculate the values in the cell formulas are based on the values, but not on that is contained in the cell. So allow me to minimize this for a few seconds and let me activate an Excel worksheet. Okay, and let me start from the very beginning. And we are going to just have a quick review of the basic formula right here. So if you could see, right, just like what I have explained, when you're creating a formula, you always use the equal sign, right? And you basically use different options to create a formula. You could use a simple additions. If I would like to add the 4 quarters, I could use quarter 1 with a plus, quarter 2 with a plus, quarter 3 and a plus symbol, and quarter 4. And that gives you the total. Now, that is the simplest way of creating a formula. However, using the different function, one of the best way to use that is what you call the AutoSum, right? And if you are in your home ribbon, and in your home ribbon, if you look at the editing, you see AutoSum right there. So when you click on the AutoSum, right, to use the AutoSum. The AutoSum feature will quickly get a total without entering them manually in a formula. So I don't need to even type the formula on the cell, right? All I have to do is again click on the cell where we want our answer to be, and then again in the home ribbon or in the formulas tab ribbon, you will find the AutoSum right there. In the home, it is right there, right? So when you click on the AutoSum or select sum from the list where you click in the drop-down arrow, AutoSum will automatically detect the range to be summed and build the formula for you. That's how smart Excel is. This works horizontally or vertically. Since our values are horizontally aligned with where the blank cell is, where we want our answer to be, it will pick up the values on the left of it. So watch, I am in F5. So I would like to get the total for agent number 6521. So all I have to do is click on AutoSum, just like what I said. Oops, now take a look. Remember I said, okay, it either looks at the value vertically or horizontally. But because there is a value vertically from top, it will pick up the value from top. How do we correct that? All you have to do while the formula is active, simply select the correct range that you would like to add together. So, and that's what we call B5 to E5, and click on the sum. There you go. Okay, so that's AutoSum. Again, I could click it using the formulas. Let's go to formulas. If I click on AutoSum, there you go. So it says equal sum B6 to E6. Now it pick up because I already corrected the previous one, so it will follow through. Now, what is the easiest way to complete a series once you know that you are using the correct formula? All you have to do is use the autofill handle to copy the formula. So take a look. Watch as let me just make it a little bigger. I am currently in F6. And at the corner of F6, on the lower right corner, you see the tiny box right there? Notice if I hover on top of the tiny box, my mouse will change from a white cross to a tiny black cross, right? So that's what you call the autofill handle. All you have to do is click and hold your left mouse and drag over to copy the formula. Now take a look to check, are all my formulas correct? Yes, it is actually correct. That's how it is to use the AutoSum feature. Very simple. You notice, once again, the AutoSum features will allow you to quickly get a total without even entering them manually. You just need to watch out if it is selecting the correct values in your table. When you have a lot more values that you need to add, there is a quicker way to do it. We could use what we call functions, like as I've shown you earlier. So what is a function? It is a built-in predefined formula that you could quickly perform mathematically, statistically, and logical operations. So just like let me just share with you some of the functions that we have. Okay, let me minimize this and let me go back to this again. Now, take a look. These are some of the commonly used functions. And what we have here is the average, which returns the average arithmetic mean of the argument. Minimum returns the minimum value in the list of argument. Maximum returns the maximum value or the highest value in the list of argument. Count counts the number of cells. Watch this. What's the difference between count and count A? Count counts the number of cells that contains numbers and count numbers within the list of argument. That's what the count does. However, the count A function count the number of cells that are not empty in the range. So when you're counting text within the list, you use the count A. Okay, so basically that's what we use. Let's minimize this now and let's go back to our worksheet in Excel. Okay, there you go. And that's my worksheet. So before I proceed, again, I'm going to use the auto sum here. You see how it picks up all the values, click on the check mark, and oops, why did it do that? Okay, because it shows that I don't have enough space for the answers. All I have to do, good at certain things are happening so that you could see how to resolve them. I have to move put my mouse between column B and C. Can you see now the width of my column and adjust? There you go. Now I have enough space for them. So obviously, I would like to increase the size of every column to be able to copy through the formula for each one of them. There you go. See how beautiful? How you could efficiently and effectively work on your cells. Now let's work on the different functions that I've spoken about. The sum, the average, the highest, the lowest, and the count. So let's start with, this is under entertainment, the cable TV. And I would like to get the sum. Now, instead of using the sum function, the auto sum, we will use the sum function. So how do we use the sum function? Just like a basic formula function starts with always the equal sign, right? And some of the common functions being used are the sum, the count, the maximum, the minimum, and the average. And we use the sum function. So what we could actually do in here, let me demonstrate to you how to be able to use that. We will say equals, and I will type, I know I wanted to add, so I would like to use the sum function, correct? So equal S. The moment I start typing the letter S, right? Notice I could type the letter U and I see the sum function right there. So instead of completing, I would allow Excel to give me the complete formula. So I see sum and it gives me the definition of the formula. It adds all the numbers in a range of cell, and that's exactly what I wanted. So I double click on it. You notice it gives me the name of the function with an open parenthesis, which is ready to accept the range that I would like to add together. So in that range, I would like to add together B4. So watch, as I put my mouse in the middle of the cell, click and hold your left mouse and drag it slowly to include January to March. Let go and click on the check mark to get the total. So just like any formula, in E4, you get the answer, but in the formula bar, you see the formula that is being used, right? And that's how we actually use the sum function. Okay, so basically that's what we do when we wanted to be to actually be able to do and use the sum function. Let's do it one more time. So I'm going to show one more time. Again, we say equal sum. And that's a sum. Double click, select the range. Okay, from B5 to D5, click on the check mark, and that's how you get it. And as I've shown you earlier, we could actually use the autofill handle to complete, the formulas for the rest of the row. Take a look how it completed the formula for you. Yes. Okay, so now let's go to the average, right? So for the average, we use equals and we say average, and we see the average right there. Okay, so we select, and obviously you have the same amount, so the average will obviously be the same. And if I copy downwards, use the autofill, and that's basically what it is. Okay, there's the average. Average is actually based on, you notice it only pick up to letter D. The highest, if you wanted to see the highest, you say equals max. MAX. There's a MAX, double click on it. And so you select the range from B4 to D4. Click on the check mark. And once again, autofill. And look, it actually picks up the highest value from the range that was selected. And that's the highest, or, what you call the max. And for the lowest, we say equals min, M-I-N, double click, and let's select the range from B4 to D4. Click on the check mark, and you could use again the autofill handle to copy the formula. Perfect. Min means the lowest value that you have. And in here, let's just use the famous AutoSum to be able to do that, to be able to complete the series quickly. Now, remember about the count, okay? So we say the count of the items. So if I say equals count, and I use the count, and so if I select this items, let's see if what will it produce. It would say 4. If I wanted to use the number of entry, which is the text, so that's when I start using count A. See the count A? It says it counts the number of range that are not empty. So as long as you have a text or an item listed, it will be counted. So I'm going to use count A, select the range of items, click on the check mark, and you have that installed for you. Perfect, right? And that's so beautiful. So that's basically how you create a formula to use the different items. Commission. Okay, now while we are here on the text, on the next one, I am just going to show you quickly how to use another way of using the function. Okay, I showed you the quick way of using the function, right? And there is another way of using functions. And let me click on F5 where I want my answers to be. I would like to get the sales total for every agent, okay, region 1 to region 4. Oh, you didn't understand the difference between the count and the count A. Okay, let me go back to it. Good question. Okay, and I want everybody to be able to understand it. Take a look. Remember here, I used the count, correct? So let me just delete both of them to show you the difference, okay? If I would like to count the number of items using the items in the month of January, and if I use equal count, okay, and the first entry is count, look at the description of what kind of function it is. The count, it will count the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. So because this contains numbers, it will count it. Okay, so I double click and this contains numbers, so I could count how many items are this. And if I click on the check mark, it would say 4. Okay, let me delete that. However, if I want to get the count of items, but I'm using this or the text, so I would say equals count. Again, I will use count, and I will select the number of items. It will actually give me a 0. Why? Again, because the count A, see the count A? Look at the definition. It counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. Okay, it is not empty, right? This is not empty, but they are actually, I used the count. It is, what did I use earlier? The count, sorry. I got confused to what I'm showing you. I was using the count, I double click, okay? Remember the definition, let me go back to the definition once again, so it's going to be clear. So look at the count. It says it will count the number of cells in the range that contains numbers. These are not numbers, okay? These are items. So then therefore, if I use the count and I selected the items, which are not numbers, it will actually give me a 0 value. Because remember, it will, by definition, it will only count the number of cells that have numbers in it. Okay, so let me delete. So if I use count once again, and it says, look at the definition, count the number of cells in a range that contains numbers. And these contains numbers, so I could use this to count the number of items for the month of January. So if I double click and I selected this, and it will give me the correct answer for. Now, this is asking for the number of entry, and the entry are actually under the items number. So then therefore, instead of using the count, we will use the count A. So take a look. I would say equal count, and I say count A. Oops, before I do it too fast, let me show you the definition, equal count. And I use the count A. Let me highlight it first. Look at the definition. It says it counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So which means as long as it's not empty, it will be counted. So I will select this range. So I double click on count A because I know it's going to select this range because it's not empty, and it will give me a total of 4. Is it clearer now? The difference between the count and the count A? Is it good? Or it's still confusing? Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, so let's go to the commission worksheet. If you put in B7 a letter, okay, if we put B7 a letter, so if I put here, or if I don't put anything, or you said put the letter A, do you see how it reduces? Okay, it reduces because that is not a number. So it will only count the numbers. Make sense? Okay. So now you saw the difference. Very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, now let's go to the commission. And in here, I am going to show you how to use this function, the insert function, in creating a formula or using the function. So equals, again, I am in F5. So I say, instead of typing equal, I would simply click on FX. Okay. And in here, I would like to use the sum function, right? So I double click on the sum, and it automatically would add, can you see right there how it gives you all the values? You see that? The 450,000, the 270,500, the 99,985, and so forth and so on, right? So it selected B5 to E5, right? And if I agree with that, all I have to do is simply click OK. And that's how you use the insert function. Okay. You have to remind me. Yes, you have. Yes, as long as you're in attendance, I could send you the recording. Okay. So there you go. So let me now click to autofill. Okay, and do the same thing. We could do the auto sum. Okay, and use the autofill to copy the formula. There you go. Now, if we have extra time, I will go back to this worksheet and talk about how to use the difference as an added bonus for the class, the difference between absolute and relative self-reference. But let's now go to the next topic, which is basically about the date functions. Okay, so there you go. Okay, let me just delete this. Okay, so let me just zoom it a little bit so you could see better. Okay, so we are now in the date function, although we have some more time to work on this. Excel provides a wide variety of built-in date function that you could use to insert the current date in a cell or to calculate the number of days between the starting and the ending dates. To insert a date function, all you have to do is click the date and time button in the function library group in the formulas. Remember right here? Or if you look here, you see under the formulas, the date and time functions. These are the different date functions. You see how many date functions you have? That's a lot. Okay, you could explore onto those different functions in the functions library in the formula tab, or when you go here in the insert functions and you look at date and time category and look at the different functions that you could use for the date. There are a lot, right? So in the date function worksheet, right? So we are in the date function worksheet. And if I wanted to go to get, I'm in D2, and I would like to get today's date, you could use the function called today to enter the current date in the selected cell. So all you have to do is in D2, begin typing the function. Again, any formula, you start with the equal sign, correct? And I will simply type the function today. There you go. The moment I start typing to I see today right there. If I highlight it, it gives me the definition. It will return the current date formatted as a date. Okay, so it will return the current date as formatted. So double click. Okay, and let me close it with another. If you have an open parenthesis, close it with a close parenthesis and hit the enter key. And that gives us the current date, 5/18/2023. Rafael, I didn't catch your question. Which portion are you referring to? Okay, you could put it into chat. Okay, so now, as I mentioned, next to calculate the number of years each employee have, okay. Okay, so now to calculate the number of years each employee has worked in this column, years of service, right? We will use the year function, that's part of the date function, to return the year in a specific date serial number. That's how it works. So I am here in D5. Okay, so I am here in D5 with the first employee. So look how I am going to use the formula. So I would say equals, and I would say year. You see how the year came out? It will return the year of a date, an integer in the range of 1900 to 9999. Okay, so I say equal year. Okay, and I am going to use today's date, which is in D2. Okay, close parenthesis. minus the year, okay, of the hire date, okay, which is in C5. See that? Okay, and close parenthesis. Now, look at the formula right there. So I'm using today's date against the different hire date. Okay, so I could be very productive, right? So right now, subtract D2, which is today's date, and the hire date. If you click on the check mark, it will allow me, and I will see that employee 1 have 23 years of service. Okay, that's how quick that years of service has been calculated with the use of the year, okay, date formula. However, to be able to copy the formula for the rest of the rows of information, notice with this formula, let me double click on it, it is always going to be subtracted from today's date, which is located in D2, correct? So the second employee will have to be equals D2 minus D2 minus C6, correct? And so forth and so on. So what do we do for a value that you would like to look at it constantly? So what we do, oh, can I do it again, please? Okay, I will do it again. Let me cancel it. Okay, so let me just delete it. Okay, so I would say equals. I will use the year because our goal is to calculate the number of years each employee has worked. We will use the year function again, and to return the year in a specific date serial number, right? So what we're going to do is you are going to use the current date minus the higher date will give you the total number of years of service. You agree? Okay. But don't forget, this format should actually be in general format. If you take a look, this is the general format for this later on. So I'm just going to say equals year. And the moment I type the letter Y, it gives me the list of the different function. So the first one on the list is the year. What will it do? The year will return the year of a date, an integer in the range, on this range. So I select that. So I would like to select it from the current date. Okay, because you wanted to get the total number of years service using their hire date and today's date. So that's why we have to use D2. Okay, and let me close that. Minus the hire date, so we could say year, double click again, and that will be C5. Got it? To get the difference, you click on the check mark and it gives me 23 years of service. However, to be able to copy the formula quicker, you could actually make sure that D2 can be changed into what you call an absolute cell reference, or you want it to remain constant. How do you make a cell constant? So with this formula, we click on D2, and to convert this relative cell reference to an absolute cell reference, you simply use the F4 function key to make it absolute. The dollar symbol before the D and the dollar symbol before the 2 makes this cell reference absolute. So if I do that, it will actually allow me to be able to copy it. You see that? I will be able to copy the formula. If I did not do that, watch again. If I did not make this absolute, okay, let me remove the absolute value. Okay, I did not make it absolute. If I copy, the first formula is correct. If I copy, everything will be wrong. Because in a formula, when you're copying relative cell references, it goes one cell down, it copies. So it is relative to the location of the formula. So it's using, in here, it is using C6. In here, is this using C7? But look, this one goes down too. Okay? So, and that's actually wrong. So to make it always looking at D2, so here we will make D2 as an absolute cell reference F4. There you go. A dollar symbol before the D and a dollar symbol before the 2. Using the F4 function, and that converts the number into an absolute cell reference. And because we made it absolute, you could simply, you see that? Get the total number of years of service for every employee. Take a look. So it's using D2 constantly minus the current row you are. I am in D9, so it is using the cell in C9. I am in D10, so it is using the cell C10 and still looking at D2. Did it make sense? And that's the meaning of relative cell reference. Now, okay, and just make sure that this is in general format. If it gives you a weird number, all you have to do is select general to make sure it gives you the correct one. How did you make it into an absolute value? Using in your keyboard, you have the function key F4. When you put your mouse in the cell, right? In this case, where I had my D2, if you press the F4, it will automatically convert a relative cell reference into an absolute cell reference. Okay. So that's what it will actually do. Okay. So that's basically what it is. Now, okay. Any more question? Yeah. If you look at if you are in front of your keyboard, if you look at on the top row of your keyboard, you see the function key F1, F2, F3, F4 is the one that is what you use to convert the values or the cell address from relative to an absolute cell reference. Okay, any more questions? So far, so good? Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Okay, now, if you wanted to be more precise to calculate the number of days between the start date and the end date, so our end date, okay, will be this date, right? So the function we could use is what you call the days 360, okay? This function is based on a 360-day year. So the formula will be equal days 360, the start date and the end date. To calculate the numbers between two dates, and then you divide it into 365 to get the correct result. So if I am in E5, right? So I would say equals, okay? And I would say days. You see where I have days 360? Can you see that on the list? When I highlight that function, it says it will return the number of days between two dates based on a 360 days year, 12, okay, 360, 30 days months. Okay, so that's what it will calculate, right? So it will calculate the number of days between the hire date and the current date, right? Based on the 360 days to find the number of years that you actually have, the actual date. So I use days 360. Allow me to double click on it. So I now have the function, open parenthesis. So it's asking for the dates. So I am right here where I have my, this is on D2, right? But my current year is in C2. Okay, comma. Okay, and then I will use D2 and I would make this absolute cell reference. Okay, and I will close parenthesis. Remember, once you have an open parenthesis, you have to close it. Divided by 365. Okay, and that will give me the exact number of years of service. So I have 2302. Let me repeat one more time. Equals 360. Oops. Oh, sorry. Equals days. Wrong spelling. Equal days 360. There you go. Days 360, double click. Okay. And again, you're going to get your date, which is basically this date, comma, and today's date, ending date, and make sure it is absolute, so you could copy it later on, divided by 365 to give you the precise or the exact amount, 24.91. If I double click, and that will do the function for the rest. Okay. You have to use the absolute cell reference because it's always looking at today's date. Okay. If you don't do that, then you will have to do every row individually. You use it so that you could actually copy the formula, and that saves you a lot of time. Okay. Now let's go to the next worksheet where you could actually talk about the work days. In a workday worksheet, we need to calculate the number of work days being spent for a project. Okay. So I have my start date and my end date. How many days will that be? A lot of times we have projects like this. This is when it's going to start, when it's going to end. How many days is that? Let's count. So you have what you call the number of work days. So in D4, where I am right now, okay, so we use another formula called net work days. Okay, net work days. So we go, I am in cell D4. So I would say equals, and I will look for, let me just, sorry, let me make it a little bit bigger so you could see better. Okay, there you go. Looks better. So we say equals net work. Oops, what's wrong with my keyboard? There you go. Net work days. You see the network days appearing, and look at the description. Returns the number of whole weekday between two dates. So it will return the number of whole work days, right, between two dates. So these are our dates. So I'm going to just double click on it, net work days. So I am going to use B start date is actually B5, B4, comma, and C4. Close parenthesis and click on the check mark. that's 53 days. Okay. So if again, let's try one more time, equals, we say net work days, there it is. You double click on it and you select B5 and the difference between B5 and C5, which is the end date, close parenthesis, and that gives me the total. And let's copy that one. How about the number of work days without the holidays? Okay, so these are the list of the holidays. So you could actually select that. So from H4 to H11 contains company holidays for 2023. I made up some of them. This time, let's calculate the number of days excluding the weekends and holidays. So let's go to E4. So I would say equals, take a look, net work days, that's net work days, double click. So I would say B4, that's the start date. And what is the end date? C4. There you go, comma. But I have to include this listing, which is from H4, take a look, up to H11. That's the range of the holidays. But all of this have to actually be an absolute cell reference because it's always going to look at this range if I would like to copy it. So I will close parenthesis and take a look. So it's still 53, although there's a holiday in January 1st, and I'll explain to you why. The rest, if I copy, you notice there's a reduce in number of days without the holidays. Because in January 1st of 2023, if you look, January 1st is a Sunday. It's not a work day. So it was not counted as part of those holidays, okay, for the number of work days. And that's how you calculate it. Beautiful formula, right? So I'm just going to save this and I'm going to share this with all of you. We are running out of time. So on my presentation, I will send you all of this, all of this information. I will have these links which will talk about the sum function. It will also talk about Excel as a calculator, the order of which Excel operation is performed, the today function, how to calculate between two dates, the work day, the network days, and the days 360 in details, okay? So that you could actually read more information about that. But once again, this presentation is being recorded and eventually I will share with you the recording. Is there any other question? Okay, very good. If there's no more question, if there is no more question, if I may share with you the QR code that you could help me do a survey for the actual class today. And you have this, and I could share this with you. This is one of our survey. And thank you so much, Gerard. At least I'm glad it's very helpful for you. I like the date functions because they're really very helpful, especially when you're in a project and you wanted to check the number of days. That's actually very good, right? You're welcome, Michelle. Okay, so this is, if you have any cell phone, you could take a look and use the QR code to get this, to do this survey for this actual class today. And if not, I will be sending you this email with the link to be able to complete the survey. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad it is very helpful to all of you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. See you again next time.